Good evening and welcome to our show, Going Public. I'm Renee Fonseca, and joining us tonight is Mr. Bubba Orgeron, the Terrebonne Parish School District Superintendent-elect. I want to thank you, Mr. Orgeron, for joining us. Congratulations on being elected as the superintendent.
Thank you.
So, if you don't mind sharing with us, how does it feel to be the new superintendent of the Terrebonne Parish School District?
Okay, well, it's first of all, it's an honor to serve in this capacity. And I use the word excited and not excitement for the position or the title, but excited to serve and excited to work on some of the priorities. I presented a vision, and I had embedded in that vision a lot of priorities, but they were my priorities. So I'm looking forward to talking through and having conversations about the priorities so we can start moving in a direction that I think can really benefit kids.
And has your new title sunk in yet?
So I've been asked that question, and not really. It's early in the process, so it hasn't really sunk in, but I think the transition between Mr. Martin and myself will be really smooth, so it'll be seamless, and I think there won't be a whole lot of time to kind of dwell on what it feels like to be superintendent. We're going to just hit the ground running.
And I know most people of the area know that you have been in the district for a few years now. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself professionally and personally?
Sure thing. So starting personally, my wife Shannon and I, we have two sons. One's 32, one's going to be 31 in about a month. And they both reside in Houma with us, not far from where we're at. So it's very nice knowing that they're nearby with their wives. And my son Trey, he and his wife Brianna, they have two children. So we have two grandchildren, two grandboys, Henry and Aubrey the Fourth. And they call him, his nickname, I'm Aubrey Jr., I'm Bubba, and his name is Aubrey the Fourth, and he's called Rex. So we're excited to have our family close by. So that's where we're at personally. I love living in Houma. It's been great. It's nice to be connected in the community that our kids, live and reside and do things in. I'm able to go to games and be close by, which is really beneficial to me in this position. So professionally, I started my career as a special ed teacher and a high school science teacher. I taught biology and environmental science at South Lafourche High School. And I kind of bought into the whole notion when I was a science teacher of being hands-on, engaging kids in the learning. And I would do things with my kids. I taught at South Lafourche High School, and we got into one year like water quality sampling. That was kind of like the main project that drove the environmental science class. And we test water in Bayou Lafourche for dissolved oxygen and salinity and turbidity and various things to get a water quality index. And we were doing pretty high level things, and it's all things I learned from a program called LaSIP. And it taught me how to be engaging and hands-on. And I really promote that in everything that I do educationally, instructionally, is having kids engaged in the work. So that's a big thing with me. And I did it as a teacher in science. So after I left the classroom, I became an elementary assistant principal at Golden Meadow Lower Elementary. And it was a pre-K 3 school with about 500 kids. So we had a lot of kids in not very many grades. And at one time, I was the only male in the school. So it was great being in that position for the kids, looking up to me. And, I was a guy that would kick the kickball in the air, and the kids would say, it's going a mile in the sky, but it was really, not very high. And they try and catch it and enjoy that kind of thing. But it was a great job to be in an elementary school. Coming from a high school to an elementary, I learned a lot about kids. I learned a lot about curriculum and instruction at that level, and that's helped me tremendously throughout the rest of my career. Which after that, I became a middle school assistant principal, a high school assistant principal. Learned tremendous amounts of, just things about the system in those positions. And then I became a middle school principal and a high school principal. And I was a principal at South Lafourche High School, which is my alma mater. And my mom was a teacher at South Lafourche High School, so it was a big part of my life, and I became principal there, which is a really neat experience. So I cherish those days. And then I moved to the central office in Lafourche Parish, and I was secondary supervisor, and I was in charge of career tech ed, and I supervised 11 schools, 8 middles and 3 high schools, and the Career Magnet Center. So that was all things that I learned and things that I was trusted with in Lafourche Parish. And I've been in Terrebonne Parish since then for going on 7 years as assistant superintendent. And it's been I've been so thankful, I guess, to be here. I mean, that's, all kind of words to describe, what it's like being in Terrebonne Parish, but I'm thankful that door was open for me. Mr. Martin took a chance on me, not knowing me very well, but he knew my work ethic, and I'm just been gracious to be here. It's been a blessing to be in Terrebonne Parish.
And what are some of the reasons that you got into education early on?
Quite honestly, I wanted to be a science teacher. I was an outdoors kind of guy. I did the fishing, and as kids we lived in the woods. That was our playground. We were in the woods catching. I was an insect collector, and we'd catch crawfish, and minnows and little catfish, and we'd come home and we'd put them in like large fish tanks that we had set up outside at my friend and I's home. So to come back and be a science teacher, to do those kind of things with my kids was right up my alley. I really wanted to do that kind of thing and be a science teacher that did things like that with kids that they typically wouldn't do. So I would take my kids in the trees in the woods, and we'd break into logs and find grubs and snails, whatever you can find, and just expose them to life cycles and all those things that you can learn from doing the hands-on. So I really wanted to do that, and I wanted to coach. Coaching was secondary, but I did coach football and baseball for a short time, and it began to be a little too much time for me doing that, and I wanted to focus on teaching and then going back to school and getting my master's degree. And I had 2 young boys, so it was important that I tried to stay with them, or give as much time as I could with raising my 2 sons with my wife, Shannon.
I definitely hear your passion for it, and you can tell, early on with your real world experiences.
Yes.
Definitely,
yes.
I can hear it. So as superintendent, what are going to be some of your first priorities in the first few weeks?
Okay. So what I'm doing now, it's been a couple of weeks so far that I'm superintendent-elect. So I want to visit schools. So I met with principals, and I asked them to give me a schedule. So I made a schedule based on their faculty meetings. And so I'm going out and I think most teachers and employees know me, but it's a little different when you go have conversations, in front of a whole faculty, instead of just kind of going and doing observations or just, popping in here or there and saying hello. So I wanted to give them all that opportunity to just hear some of the things, priorities of my vision. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about storm recovery with some of the schools. Because that's, not everybody knows what we've been through, If I work at, let's say, I'll just say Village East, well, I know what happens at Village East or what the recovery looked like for us, because this is where I work. But on a bigger scale, what did it look like for the district? So I'm talking about some of those things, about the cost involved and, where we're headed next, what's to come. We talk a lot about, what's happening with South Terrebonne and Ellender. Those are 2 big priorities, right? So so a lot of these people have kids at those schools, so I'm trying to kind of convey where we're headed and timelines and things like that when I'm doing the school visits. So that's kind of one of the main priorities, and I'm giving everybody an opportunity to give me some feedback on, what are we doing well as a district? Tell me what are we doing well that we need to continue doing. So that's a question on a survey, and I'm also asking, what are some issues or some concerns you have? So a lot of employees have kind of responded on the survey, and then when they put in kind of their concerns and issues, I'm asking, what are some of the remedies, or what are some remedies for your concern? So that's going well. And then I conclude with I'm just getting any additional questions they may have about me or my vision or anything like that. And that's going well. And it's been nice to see teachers and, have fun, joke around a little bit, have fun with showing that side of my personality. It doesn't always come out. So it's been nice to kind of, and I told the board the other night, it's kind of like teaching a class. You're speaking in front of people, so you have a small audience, like a class of kids, so to speak, which is what I'm pretty good at. I was a good teacher, and being in that setting is it brings back memories of being a teacher. So I enjoy that.
Well, I'm sure that your employees do appreciate it.
I hope so. I hope it's well received, and it seems as though it's been well received.
I know that your vision has been posted on the TPSD website.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that stuck out to me were some of your priorities, such as universal pre-K. Can you explain some of your visions?
Sure thing. So, by the way, you mentioned it. The vision is still on the website. What I did for that was a component of the interview process. We had to assemble a video, and I made what's called a Bitmoji classroom. So if anybody would like to, just learn a little bit more about me, on that site, on that link, or in the Bitmoji classroom, I have pictures of my family and my grandsons, and pictures of our puppies. And I have what's called the entry plan, which it's like a 90-day plan, things I want to kind of get done in first 90 days of the position. So that's on there. And then there's a video that you've kind of mentioned. And the video, I go through the priorities of my vision in that video. And I have like 7 priorities. And under each priority, I have like various things built into, or we call them different tasks or things inside the priorities. So you mentioned universal pre-K. That's one that it's under the priority of unwavering care. So that's a broad priority, but there's a lot of things that fit under that priority. And so universal pre-K. So currently, pre-K is not universal in Terrebonne Parish, in every district, or most districts, probably the majority of the districts in Louisiana, it's not universal, which means we only receive funding for kids or families who fall below a certain income threshold. There's a threshold, and if their income is at or below, they qualify for federal funding. And if you're above the threshold, pre-K is not available in the public school system. So in any given year, let's say we have about 1,200 kindergarten kids. 1,200 kids, that's close to average what we have from year to year, 1,200 kids. Well, out of the 1,200, there were about 200 that didn't come to us as pre-K kids the previous year. So universal pre-K would be making available pre-K to those 200 kids who didn't meet the income threshold. So what that means for us as a district is we've got to fund that, because we don't get the funding. The funding won't change. The funding source won't change. So we've got to figure out how to, and it's not a matter of figuring out, it's a matter of figuring out how we can sustain that for long periods, long term. Because it's quite a bit of money, because 250 kids roughly, that equates to about 20 teachers and paras. It's, you do the math on that, it's a recurring cost. But so our next conversation is this going to be a priority of us in our budget? And I would say yes. I would say it will be. And there's so many benefits to pre-K. It primes the learning so that when they do start kindergarten, they're ready to learn and not go through all the procedural things of being in school. Like, that's kind of one of the biggest things, the social interactions that they have at the 4-year-old level. They understand school, they understand procedures. So when they get to kindergarten, they're doing things that when we went to school, we were doing in first grade, right? Or even beyond that. Kids are learning so much earlier, and that's such a critical thing for early, learning that lasts or endures and gets kids primed for success down the line. So that's what universal pre-K is. It doesn't mean it's mandatory. That's two different things. Universal just means it's available. Mandatory means you must come. So it's not mandatory, but universal is what we're looking at doing. Probably not until 23, 24. Not probably, 23, 24 would be the first time we'd be able to do it. There's a lot of logistics involved. Do we have the capacity, the space? That's a big question. Our schools are tight. Some of them are tight, so if we'd add a couple of pre-K classrooms, can we do that? So where are the kids that typically don't come to us? What school would they attend? And in that school, do we have space for those kids at that school? So a lot of logistics, but it's worth the time and efforts. And we have a lot of time to plan. It seems as though if we're 23, 24, but that'll be on us before we know it, and we'll be registering universally, students. So it's a priority of the board for, so we've got to get all that approved and discussed before we say that we're universal pre-K.
No, I'm
But
sure
we're looking at it, yes.
I'm sure the community would absolutely appreciate that also.
Okay, I hope so.
Especially, with so many parents that are not able to send their children to pre-K.
Right, exactly.
Definitely a good
Exactly.
priority. Also, in your list of priorities, I saw that you had mentioned forming a magnet school.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell me more about what this magnet school would look like?
Yeah, sure thing. So the magnet school, that's it's not my idea. That's been talked about for quite some time, and typically it comes down to being able to fund something like that, the building of a new school or having a school or a building available to kind of do that kind of thing. So in my idea, the way I look at it, a magnet school doesn't necessarily service or serve just the higher level kids, the kids who are on the TOPS diploma track. It could service any student that wants to take a class or course that typically is not available at their school. And I've got some examples. I can give probably countless examples, but for instance, here's a for instance. We have a course at South Terrebonne. It's called Forensic Science. Sounds exciting, right? They do all kind of investigations and really kind of get into kind of crime scene things. And so it's good for kids who may be pursuing anything in criminal justice, law enforcement, medical field, from nursing to pre-med kids, all of those kind of things. It would be beneficial. Matter of fact, that's who takes that class at ST, those kids. So there's no other class at any of our three other high schools like that. So that would be a class if we universally house this class in a centralized location call it a magnet school or an academy. Kids from all schools could take that class if that teacher would be willing to teach half a day at that school, at the magnet school. So, and that's just an example. There are others like we have kids who want to take chemistry 2 currently. But like at one of our schools, we only have like 5 kids who want to take chemistry 2. So the question is, do we make that class for 5 kids? And it's hard not to, but it's hard to at the same time, because we don't have availability of teachers to kind of teach such low numbers. It's hard to make those kind of classes. But if you centrally locate a Chem 2 department or Chem 2 class, all kids from every school could come and centrally take that course with that teacher who's really good or an expert at that subject. They would have access to that. So that's kind of the concept behind that. And we talked about in the past and currently even the arts. That would be, and we have programs at each school, but we could make something very advanced at a magnet school in the arts, whether it's performing arts or visual arts, or that's just some things we can do at a school like this. And it's not to mimic we can take what other districts have done and we can make it our own, make what's good for Terrebonne Parish students. So we have such good programs at our high schools, but some of them are only at one school, so we could kind of probably give access to other schools, all the great things that are happening individually at some schools, have access in the middle. So there's a lot that goes behind the concept. There's a lot of planning. There's the finance piece. How do we fund that? So it's in the infancy of being, established. I mean, you're just at the conversation level at this point.
Is there anything else in your vision plan that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure thing. So one thing we've begun, you asked earlier, kind of what are some of the priorities, like getting started with the job. So we're meeting with staff. I'm meeting with some of the supervisory staff, and we're talking about next steps or first steps, rather, with some of the priorities. So things that need to get ready for next year, like we want to do a jump start and a top scholar banquet. We have 2 diploma tracks. Most people know that. Kids that are going to college are on the TOPS diploma track, and kids who are going to a career school or going straight into the workforce typically take the jump start diploma path. And we want to equally recognize and value both. So we're going to have like an awards presentation banquet of sorts for both sets of students, both diploma track students. So we're in the process of coming up with criteria of who qualifies, what signifies being a top scholar on both paths, and then the planning of the event and all those things. So that's one thing we want to do for next year that we're talking about right now. We have some safety things. We're looking at maybe enhancing some of the safety features of our schools. We've done a lot under this, as of recent, with single point entry and perimeter doors that are locked and secure. We're just looking at next level things at this point for next year as well. So those conversations are being had, and ideas are coming to fruition based on some of the conversations.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us
Sure,
tonight.
sure
It looks
thing.
like our time
Sure
is
thing.
up.
All right.
Congratulations once again
Thank
on
you very
being
much.
elected as
Thank you.
superintendent. We would like to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Don't forget to join us every Tuesday on Going Public. Good night.